It's been a horrible season, but can Maryland finish strong?
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, video content creator for 247 Sports and InsideMarylandSports.com, and host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And these days, new potential hires can feel like high-stakes wagers for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Maryland has a chance to finish the season on the right note on their last game of this season. The last game, well, not the last game of the season, but the last game of the regular season before we get into Big Ten tournament action. We play Penn State on the road at 7:30 on a Sunday. I still don't know how I feel about these Sunday games because I feel like college basketball is more meant to be played on a Saturday, but they continuously give us these Sunday games, which I just feel like it's just weird thinking about Sunday for college basketball. I'm so used to football being on Sunday, but obviously the football season's over when I think about NFL. But I still don't know how I feel about these Sunday games overall. But this season has been horrible. It's been bad. And at times, it hasn't been enjoyable for a lot of time, and I'm ready for this season to be over. To be completely honest, I'm ready to move on to the next part of next year's season and get ready for an off season, see what Maryland does in the portal, because I think this roster to look completely different, and I hope it's for the good, and we could completely revamp this thing. Obviously, we got Derek Queen coming in, and we got different people leaving. We got Jameer Young's going to be gone. We got Dante Scott's going to be gone. The portal, Maryland has a lot of spots in the portal. We only brought in 2 recruits, Malachi Palmer and Derek Queen. But I felt like this season wasn't enjoyable. I felt like this season was a waste of talent and a waste of a really solid performance from different players and just overall talent that we had, specifically talking about Jameer Young. I think we wasted his last year in college basketball. I think when you have a player like that and you still have a really good roster, I thought going into the year, you kind of want to put together a much better season than we put together. Even if maybe we're not a March Madness team, whatever it is, you want to do better than what we've been. We're about 500 right now, and you just want to be better than that when you have the talent of a Jameer Young, and then you also have a talent of a Julian Reese type of player. If you have 2 of those guys that have the potential to be all Big Ten type of talent, you just want to put together a better season than what we did. So I felt as if the season was a little bit of a waste that time. I just felt like it wasn't as good as I wish it was going to be, or as I thought it was going to be. And I'm happy for it to be over. I'm ready to move on to the next steps. And that's just me being completely honest. I'm interested to see what we do in the Big Ten tournament. I'll talk about that on another day. But of course, we got this Penn State game. And I don't know if people are going to watch this game. It's the last game of the season. It doesn't mean a whole lot. People have stopped caring about Maryland basketball this entire year. I mean, once we got into that spot where it's like, oh yeah, we don't look very good, a little bit into Big Ten play, it was like when we had home games, people wouldn't really show up and there'd be barely any fans in the crowd. And so you're looking at this Penn State game. It's interesting because it's senior day for them. It's the last regular season for both teams, and it's senior day for them. So there's a weird energy always around that, whether it's like emotions, whatever it is, happiness for those guys, whatever it is for those Penn State guys. It's going to be a weird emotion, but I bet Penn State will have some people in the crowd overall. But I will be looking for Maryland to finish the season on the right note. I think that's important going into the Big Ten tournament and just overall with this season. I think it's important for us to finish on the right note. But Penn State they're only 14-16 right now. So overall, they're just ahead of us in Big Ten play. This Penn State team is nothing special. It's not very good. It's nothing we should be scared about at all. It should be a place that we should be able to go and get a win in our last game. in our last regular season game. And it's just kind of crazy to think that it's the last regular season game of guys like Jameer Young and Dante Scott. And I don't know, there could be a lot of guys. People keep talking about this in the Maryland community. There could be a lot of different players that decide to leave after this season. I don't know. I have no evidence to back this up. But all I'm saying is different people think Julian Reese could leave after this year. I don't want it to happen. I would love to see him in the front court with Derek Queen, but I don't know if that's realistic. I don't know. If I was in Julian Reese's situation, it could make sense for me to go somewhere else and play somewhere else. I think it might depend on how well Maryland uses the portal overall, but that's like what I talked about. I can't wait for this year to be over and see how Kevin Willard can use the portal. It either is going to be extremely disappointing and we're going to look at this roster next year and I'm going to be like, we're in trouble because we didn't land the players that we needed to land, or I could look at it and be really excited for some of the potential gets that we could get overall in terms of players in the portal, or maybe we pick up a late commit. I don't really know what the staff has cooking, but I do know that just about every position after this year and how bad we have looked and how bad this season has gone and how many guys could potentially be gone, we're going to need a lot of guys in the portal to be able to fix this. But back to this Penn State team. Like I said, it's senior night for this Penn State team. It's the last regular season game. And I want to see everybody play in this game. I want to see everybody play as well. I want to see us play hard. And I think the game probably comes down to who plays harder. But I want to see different guys. I think everybody on our bench should really play. I'm talking about the guys that have gotten some minutes here or there, but maybe their playing time's not consistent. I'm thinking about Jonathan Lamoth, guys like that. I want to see Jonathan Lamoth play in this type of game. I think it's important to get him in this type of game because it's like not much is at stake at all. There's not a March Madness bid on there. There's not a Big Ten championship. There's not one. It's like one of those regular season games in the NFL where it's like we're not going to the playoffs and it feels like we're just playing for draft position. But college, you're not playing for draft position. But overall, you still want to finish this game on the right note. And I think the fans kind of deserve that. The fans that are going to watch the game and that are true fans, because if you're a true fan, you're going to watch this game. If those guys who ever watch this game and who's a Maryland fan is a real fan, those guys will go through the thick and thin of Maryland basketball. And for those people, they deserve a win after the terrible season that we've put up in our last game. And it's always, always, always better for your last game to go out on a high note, whether you're going to the playoffs or whether you're not, whether it's a consolation game, whatever it is. Winning is always going to be better than losing. It always is going to be. Unless maybe in some situations in the NFL where it's like if we lose, we get the number 1 pick. If we win, we get the number 2 pick. Maybe that's like one of the rare cases. But in college sports, winning will always trump all. And that's one of the good things that college basketball has. And being a Maryland basketball fan is cool. It's always about winning. Sometimes in the pro, you kind of want your team to tank a little bit, and you want maybe down the stretch, you kind of want them to lose a game because it'll help the team in the future. But losing games in college basketball doesn't help anybody in the future, or in college football. It doesn't help. And that's some of the beauty behind college sports is that you still have these kids. They're not playing. I mean, with NIL, I guess they do play for money kind of, but they're not playing for a paycheck, but they still are going to go out there and fight in their last college game. It means a lot. It's going to be interesting emotion around the Penn State team, but I think this game is extremely important for Maryland to finish out on the right note. How do the Terps actually win this game? I will tell you about that after this ad from Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experience with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date in all the latest world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfire, www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. How do the Terps win this final game against Penn State? Like we talked about before, I don't think this Penn State team is anything special. I'm going to tell you how the Terps pull the upset at Penn State on their senior day, because what else could be better than beating Penn State, a Big Ten, I don't know if I would call it, I guess you call it a rival, a Big Ten rival opponent on their senior day. Let's ruin that for them. Indiana ruined our senior day, so let's ruin another senior day to make up for some of that horrible feeling of watching Jahmir Young go off the court for the last time and seeing that emotion from him and being like, dang, you can tell bro is really upset of how it ended, how his season, how his career came to an end in the Maryland basketball arena, and how this final season went for Jahmir Young. So let's make it up. Let's win their final regular season game, even though it's on the road, even though there won't be very many Maryland fans there. Let's win this game against Penn State. And how do we do that? And I think it all starts with Julian Reese. I love looking back at the first matchups when I'm looking at these games late into the Big Ten play. I like to see how we were successful in the first matchup and how we were able to win, because we're playing the same team. And yes, a lot has changed since then. I don't know how much the Maryland team has changed. I think we have gotten better. I do. I think we've played really well in spots, and I do think we're a lot better team, especially the team that I saw in some of the out-of-conference. I think we're a lot better than that team I saw. But I do still think that a lot of the weaknesses still exist with the Maryland team that existed earlier on the season, but we have done a better job at covering them up. But looking back to the first matchup, Julian Reese had one of his better games of the season in his first matchup against Penn State. So I was like, that's interesting. Anytime Julian Reese plays well for us, it seems like we win games. If he has over 20 points, we have a really good shot at winning the game whenever he helps out in the scoring that much and is that much of an offensive threat to opposing teams. We are in a pretty good spot overall. And in the first matchup, he had 24 points against Penn State and 15 rebounds in a bunch of offensive rebounds as well in the first matchup. He dominated that Penn State team, and I expect him to be able to do that again in the next matchup or on Sunday, and that's one of my keys to winning this game is Julian Reese. I like Julian Reese because he dominated the first matchup, and I think he's going to be able to do it again against Wahab, who was formerly at Maryland, but I don't think he can guard Julian Reese, and I expect Julian Reese to have a field day against Wahab. I expect him to be able to score at will and take some of the pressure up Jahmir Young, because realistically, Penn State could be focused on Jahmir Young, which would make sense. That's probably what I would do. If I was playing against Maryland, I would probably focus a lot on Jahmir Young. I expect they might double Julian Reese down low. Maybe they trust Wahab. He's a pretty big guy down there, and he's known to be a solid defender, but I feel like Julian Reese definitely gave him a fit. But I trust Julian Reese overall to definitely outplay Wahab and to be able to score Wahab. And that's my first key to the Terps. It always really starts with Julian Reese. You know kind of what you're going to get from Jahmir Young. Reese has been up and down, but I really do trust Reese in this spot. And I think that's the first key to how Maryland wins this game for Julian Reese to dominate. Ace Baldwin is interesting. I think he's their best player right now. Limit him. He's their best scorer right now. Win that matchup against him. Ace Baldwin's a really good player. When we played him in the first game, he had 24, and he really kept them from losing that game by not like a good amount, but losing by Maryland being able to have that game handily. That game came down to the wire. I think it was an OT game. If I remember correctly, it was a while ago. I did look at some of the statistics, but I forgot if it was an OT game or not. But I did look at the game before this. But that game, it was either OT or it came down to definitely came down to the wire. Because I remember it was one of our first Big Ten opponents. I think did it come down to the last shot? Now I want to look it up overall. But in the first matchup, Ace Baldwin, my point is Ace Baldwin played really well overall, and he had 24 points, which was a good look for him against a Maryland team. But I think he's their best player right now in terms of offensive ability and scoring. So I want to be able to limit him somewhat because I think that's important for us to be able to do, for us to be able to limit him. But in the first matchup, it was an OT game. I do remember correctly. It was 75-81, but Maryland won the overtime 10-4. Okay, so it was an overtime game. And Ace Baldwin, like I said, Ace Baldwin kept them in the game really with 24 points. So that's interesting overall. I like him. I think he's a really good player overall, and he was able to kind of keep them in the game in the first matchup against these two teams. But they also don't have their guard Kanye Clary anymore. He hasn't played in a while. I don't know the exact situation. That's another reason why I say take away Ace Baldwin and play heavy defense on Ace Baldwin and make sure you sit down on him, because they don't have another elite guard anymore now that Kanye hasn't played. But apparently they have played better without him. So it's interesting kind of that they have. He's still their leading scorer in terms of points per game, Kanye Clary is, but he hasn't played, and they've played better in spots without him. So it's kind of interesting, but that's why I think you got to put pressure on Ace Baldwin overall. And then Ace Baldwin also defensively, he's a little bit interesting. He's a good defender, and he averages 2.8 steals per game. So almost 3 steals per game, and that goes back to another key of mine. Don't let Ace Baldwin cause a bunch of turnovers and create chaos on the defensive side of the ball, because that'll make it that much harder for Maryland to win. And my last key of the game is Maryland has to get back to playing good defense. We did it a little bit ago. We do it pretty consistently. We've been a top 5 defensive team on KenPom. We've been pretty crazy good at defenses here, but I want to get back to being elite on defense overall. But I think you are able to do that against this Penn State team, because I don't think this Penn State team is great on offense. So get back to being a good defensive team, because I didn't see that against Indiana on senior day, and I didn't see that against Illinois a couple of games ago. Don't go away from that identity. Don't try and get into some offensive battle. And I'm not saying that we can't win that game against Penn State. We might, because they're not anything crazy offensively either. But I do think we're better when we play that defensive side of the game plan that seems to work really well for us. What will actually happen in the game? What are my predictions? I will tell you my predictions after this ad from LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the tools to help the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn Jobs isn't another just job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to the professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all the while making the process easy and inclusive. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have time or resources to hire. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. What are my predictions? What will happen on senior night at Penn State? I think Maryland wins this game. I just think we're the better team. When it comes down to it on senior night for Penn State, I think Maryland has the more talented team. I think we are the better team overall, and I think Maryland wins this game. I think it goes back to my point that I made again about Julian Reese. I think Julian Reese is going to dominate down low, and I don't think Wahab can really stick with Julian Reese on the inside. I don't think he's good enough to. I don't think he can move his feet quite well enough to stick with Julian Reese down there, and that showed in the first matchup, and I think it's going to show up again. And if they double him, well, then I think Julian Reese is a good enough passer to put us in good spots. But a lot of it comes down to if Maryland's going to hit their shots. If we hit our shots at 8% from the three-point arc and like low 40s from the field, then maybe we won't win the game. But if Maryland does a decent job shooting, we don't have to be elite shooters. We're not an elite shooting team. Then we're going to be just fine. And I think our defense can clamp this team. I really do. I don't think this Penn State team is very good on offense, and I think they're going to have trouble scoring on us. I don't think they have a lot of scoring options overall with this team. And Maryland's defense has suffocated some of the better Big Ten offenses this entire season. And so I'm looking at it as like the Penn State offense hasn't been that good, so I'm thinking that we should be able to clamp down on them as well. That's another reason why I think Maryland will win the game. The senior day thing kind of does scare me a little bit because there's always a weird energy behind those things. Sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's like happy, but like you don't know how a team can respond. Like a Penn State team can come out really fast and strong and really like wanting to have a lot of effort in that game to win for their seniors, or they can look like what Maryland did against Indiana, where it's like, do they even want to win this game? I don't know. So maybe Maryland let the emotions get to them on senior day, and maybe that will happen with Penn State. It's a weird dynamic. I don't love that it's senior day. It always makes it, I feel like, a little bit different because there's a focus that's away from the game. Especially, it feels like it's more important to honor the seniors in this type of game than maybe even this actual game. It's like there's not a whole lot of meaning to this game in terms of the score. I mean, it matters somewhat, but it doesn't matter a ton. I'd be lying if I said it did. So that's why it's also an interesting thing. But I think this Maryland team really has nothing to lose, but needs to make up for that Indiana loss after being up 16 points to Indiana. You got to make up for that loss against Indiana. I don't think Indiana is particularly good or a really good team. I think they're better than their record, but you can't lose a 16-point team to Indiana. So I do expect Maryland to want to come back firing and to prove that they're better than that and that the fans should expect something better than that. But I can see the freshmen having a lot of effort as well and playing well. They've been playing better in spots. Kaiser and Deshaun, these also have struggled still, but I do expect them to have a little bit of a better game overall. And I do think Maryland wins this game. I'm curious about the spread. I don't know what it is yet. My best guess, it is fun to guess these spreads, but I would guess probably Penn State -3, 4, maybe. I don't know exactly. Maybe it's like 5. I don't know if it gets that high. Maybe I could be completely wrong. It could be like 6 or 7, but I would guess Penn State -4 or 3.5 or 3, somewhere around that number. I do think Maryland is probably a little bit better of a team, but I mean, the Big Ten record doesn't say that. Penn State's one slot ahead of Maryland. But at the end of the day, we have the best player on the court as well in Jameer Young, and I think we probably have the best 2 players on the court. So I think Maryland wins this game at Penn State on senior day. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball, so thank you for listening to Locked On Terps.